Hello everyone, I'm the Rikkest, and I wanted to welcome you to my channel and maybe talk a little bit about how I came to start doing this. 2 months ago I was watching my youngest, and usually I watch TV, but today she really wanted to have the TV on lockdown, so what I decided to do was just watch random videos on YouTube, and generally I don't actually search for anything. What I like to do is just see if anything that's trending actually looks good. Usually it doesn't, but there was some Joe Rogan, and I think he's a hilarious stand-up, and he actually has some very deep insights. This time it was a podcast, and I was not familiar with any of his podcasts, so I assumed it was just like funny commentary or like MMA related stuff. It was Joe Rogan and Ben Shapiro, and I had no idea who Ben Shapiro actually was, and I wasn't about to commit, a full 3 hours of my life to something that was turning out to be political. I decided to do the dishes and just listen. I really didn't actually start paying attention until he said the phrase identity politics. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? I like to think of myself as a decently well-informed person, but I guess my head has been all the way up my ass since my 3-year-old was born. I had no idea what the hell that was. The last thing I remember was telling people that Trump would win the election because the only person that could beat him was Bernie. Before that, I remember, the last thing with clarity was Romney looking like the fucking Mormon Antichrist. And I personally mostly watch entertainment news because politics is fucking boring. Or like playing games. Playing games is probably what I'd like to do more than any other hobby I have. I mean, literally any type of game, talking like backgammon to Halo, like crosswords, Sudoku, riddles, Chinese ring puzzles, everything. And like I'll even argue with my girlfriend on the rare occasion, and that could be fun. Logic puzzles, anything, as long as it's a challenge or a mental exercise. So anyway, I watched the remainder, and it was like, I don't know, maybe 90 minutes. It could have been closer to 2 hours of Joe Rogan and Ben Shapiro just like more or less catching me up on some of the things that have been playing out, but somehow left out of the mainstream media. And it could have very well been a conspiracy theory or some kind of new political dogma. So anyway, I just kind of left my tablet going, and I took my Bluetooth speaker over to the couch and just let it play. And as it was playing, I usually play music, but then I just decided to listen to the rest of that podcast, and then I just let it go. I just let it keep playing stuff, and in that time I heard maybe 10 videos from different creators, and the whole time I'm like, what in the fuck? Cut to the chase, I was totally blown away by the state of the world. And I seriously used to say that I supported feminism. I used to argue with people like regularly that women and minorities were discriminated against. And that may have been the case. Even maybe in the 90s that was the case, but I honestly feel like the well has been poisoned. So I decided to set myself on a course to find out where all this insanity is coming from, and what do I find 90% of the time? White women. I'm 100% serious. White women. And it's feminism. And feminism has its place, like actual discrimination against women. A guy not having his legs crossed on the bus is not discrimination against women. Or a guy explaining his views during a conversation is not, discrimination. It's not mansplaining. And the Department of Labor put out a report explaining the wage gap, and that is not the fucking patriarchy, okay? It's explained. It's like a 4 to 7% gap. And I'm sure there's a way to explain that away. And domestic violence. Okay, Jesus fucking Christ, domestic violence. Anybody, man or woman, or whatever gender you decide you are, that even thinks there might be violence at some point needs to just keep looking. You need to get out. That person's not for you. Now, I've spent about 2 months just catching up, and it's almost like binge watching a show. And the thing about binge watching a show is you end up, with like your favorite characters. And I've got a short list for both sides. And they're mostly YouTubers or people that do like public speaking events, or both. And for feminism, okay. For feminism, my number one is Steve Shives. Now, let me tell you why. This guy reminds me of when Stephen Colbert had his show on Comedy Central, The Colbert Report. It's almost indistinguishable from satire. And it's not, by the way. He's actually serious about everything he says. And then in descending order, Anita Sarkeesian, Zoe Park, and Thomas Smith. And I have my reasons for liking those people. Usually it's the way their videos are set up, or it just seems ridiculous. Sometimes I actually agree with some of the points they're making, but just like anyone, you're allowed to have disagreements. All right, so for what I like to call the common sense side, and that might be my bigotry because I agree with most of these people on most of their points, not everything. But for the common sense side, my number one has to be Sargon of Akkad. And this is definitely bias, okay? And part of my bias is because we look almost identical. I'm not sure how tall he is, but if you shaved his head, we would be fucking brothers, okay? And we're the same age. And oh yeah, also on top of that, he actually thinks out his points of principle, and he is. And I've watched several of his videos, and by several I mean probably 50, and that's about as many as I've watched of all these people I'm going to list. But he is very hard to refute when put under scrutiny. He thinks about this stuff. Then in descending order, Ben Shapiro, Bering, and Armored Skeptic. Now I'm huge fans of all these people. Even the feminists. I really like the feminists, and if you're familiar with these people, you can probably guess what I've learned in response to my recent reacquaintance with some of the current political talking points. And I'm not the type of person to swallow shit that I see on some kind of screen. I've literally read like thousands of articles and watched a similar but less amount of videos. I don't want to say 1,000. It's definitely not 1,000 videos. That'd be my whole fucking life. And I do admit that my favorite videos come from the feminists. They are ridiculous. They are hilarious. They are seriously hilarious. They come off as like the hurt side, or like the losing side of a high school relationship, or maybe like a stalker that keeps getting restraining orders put on them. You know, the subject of every like almost every feminist video is the mysterious patriarchy. Like, ooh, it's the patriarchy, and it's the fucking Wizard of Oz. It's just like the Wizard of Oz. If you like look behind the curtain, you're going to find the ghost of a system that died 100 years ago in Western societies. And not to say that there aren't like active patriarchies in the world, they're just not here. They're not in the Western world. With that being said, I'm very concerned about some of the laws being passed. Like, my main problem is like the limiting of free speech. Of any kind, anywhere. I mean, if you're talking shit about me, like, do it. Like, it's in the Bill of Rights. It's the very first thing. And in the Bill of Rights, it's like bundled with religion, so it makes it kind of like impossible to get rid of it. I think it almost defends its own argument, because if you think about it like this, let's say you despise religion, so you talk shit about it all the time, or are you just like sickened by what someone said about your closely held beliefs? You are protected from expressing your views either way, for or against any topic. The Constitution is unique in this way. Actually, I mean, no other country has literally the freedom of speech. In the UK, you can be charged for a crime just for calling someone a fucking fat, retarded cunt, even if they actually are an obese anthropomorphic birth canal that had its development stunted. And I was in high school in the 90s, and I am part of the generation that uses every word in like a literal and or derogatory fashion. In fact, my high school self would be in serious trouble anywhere but the U.S. just for the types of things I say. The reason I'm pointing this out is because extreme feminists are mostly fat, retarded cunts. What I want to do is like scrap the identity politics and do like identify politics. Because if anyone can identify as anything, thus forcing you to perceive their point of view because their experience, why can't I identify someone else as a witless megalomaniac because my real life experience with this archetype of people? Thank you, intersectionality. Check it out, okay? I'm not planning on making any money or even being popular. My main objective is to have fun in my own way. And if that includes disagreements or being told I'm a rape apologist, that's totally fine. You can't piss me off, and I'm not bigoted, and, I don't prefer any type of person or class or gender, and I will disagree with people and news outlets based on their ethics or their principles. Or if you're an ignorant, hypocritical dickbag that builds straw men every season of the year. Now, I can see myself being antagonistic to those kind of fucking cheek spreaders. So I think that's about it for now. I'd like to do some videos on a regular basis. It's just, this shit is too crazy to ignore. I'll leave you with this. Everyone's sphincter is the exact same color Well, it's at least in the same shade gradient. And it can be logically proven that we're all made of shit. Thanks for watching, guys.